Within hours, Minneapolis exploded. Thousands surrounded the federal building. The National Guard was activated. A curfew was declared.
4:47 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The temperature hit 9 degrees. Frost-covered windshields on Cedar Avenue. Federal immigration and customs enforcement agents sat in blacked-out SUVs, engines running, exhaust rising like smoke signals in the pre-dawn darkness. The target building stood 3 stories tall, red brick, 14 residential units. Intelligence flagged it 2 months prior. What began as routine immigration enforcement would end in gunfire, 1 man dead, and a city pushed to the edge of insurrection. Hit like so, this story reaches more people. The operation was designated Priority Alpha. ICE's Enforcement and Removal Operations Division coordinated with Homeland Security investigations. 42 federal agents were briefed at 3 a.m. at a staging facility in Brooklyn Park. The mission: execute arrest warrants on 9 individuals with final deportation orders. Standard procedure. Standard targets. But Minneapolis was not standard territory. The city had declared itself a sanctuary jurisdiction in 2017. Local police were barred from cooperating with ICE. Trust between federal agents and immigrant communities had collapsed. The moment those vehicles entered Cedar Avenue, phones started recording. At 4:51 a.m., agents moved. Body armor, tactical helmets, sidearms holstered but visible. 2 teams approached the building from north and south entrances. Boots struck frozen pavement. Keys rattled. Doors opened. Within seconds, lights flickered on in apartments. Voices shouted in Somali, Spanish, Oromo. Children cried. The building woke to chaos. Agents moved floor to floor, knocking hard, announcing presence. Federal warrants. Open the door. Compliance was immediate in some units. Resistance began in others. The first arrest happened on the 2nd floor. A 37-year-old Guatemalan man, deportation order issued in 2021, was detained in his kitchen while making coffee. His wife screamed. His teenage daughter filmed on her phone. The video went live on Facebook at 4:58 a.m. Within 3 minutes, it had been shared 200 times. Within 6 minutes, community activists were mobilizing. Text chains exploded. Cars started. People dressed in the dark and headed toward Cedar Avenue. The raid was no longer covert. By 5:12 a.m., the first protesters arrived. 20 people, then 40, then 80. They formed a human chain across the building's main entrance. Chants began. No deportations on our block. ICE out of Minneapolis. More vehicles arrived, but not federal reinforcements. Residents, activists, clergy members. The crowd swelled past 150. ICE agents inside the building were now effectively surrounded. Minneapolis police units staged 2 blocks away, under orders not to intervene unless violence erupted. The sanctuary policy left them in legal limbo. Federal operation. Local opposition. No clear protocol. Inside apartment 3C, the situation turned. Agents knocked on the door. No response. They knocked again, identifying themselves. Silence. Protocol required forced entry after refusal to comply with a federal warrant. At 5:19 a.m., the battering ram struck. The door frame splintered. The lock broke. Agents entered, flashlights sweeping the dark interior. 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. Small kitchen. They moved tactically, clearing corners, checking closets. In the rear bedroom, they found their target. Miguel Ángel Santos. Age 28. Honduran national. Asylum claim denied in 2020. Final deportation order issued in 2022. But he was not alone. His partner, 7 months pregnant, American citizen, stood in front of him. She refused to move. Agents ordered her to step aside. She didn't. Her name was Rachel Lindstrom. White. 26 years old. College educated. She knew her rights. She also knew federal agents had no legal authority to detain her. She planted herself as a human shield. Comment justice if you believe what happened next was wrong. The lead agent, a 12-year ICE veteran, repeated the order. Step away or face obstruction charges. Rachel did not move. Miguel stood behind her, hands visible, saying nothing. The tension compressed into seconds. Then Miguel shifted. Agents later claimed he reached toward his waistband. Rachel later testified he was trying to reach for her hand. The motion was ambiguous. The response was not. 3 gunshots. Rapid succession. Miguel fell. Rachel screamed. Blood spread across the bedroom floor. Agents immediately called for emergency medical services. 5:21 a.m. paramedics were staged nearby but could not reach the building due to the crowd outside. Minneapolis police were forced to create a corridor, pushing protesters back. It took 4 minutes. By the time EMTs reached Apartment 3C, Miguel Ángel Santos had no pulse. CPR was attempted for 11 minutes. He was pronounced dead at 5:36 a.m. No weapon was found on his body. No weapon was found in the apartment. The object he allegedly reached for did not exist. The news detonated through the crowd outside. Dead. Unarmed. Pregnant girlfriend present. The chants stopped. For 5 seconds, there was silence. Then rage. The crowd surged toward the building entrance. Objects flew. Rocks. Bottles. A trash can. Windows shattered on the ground floor. ICE agents inside activated emergency protocols, barricading doors, calling for backup. The protesters were not trained militants. They were teachers, nurses, students, parents. But grief and fury erased training. The line between protest and riot dissolved. Minneapolis police moved in with riot shields at 5:50 a.m. Pepper spray deployed. Flashbangs detonated. The crowd scattered but did not disperse. They regrouped 1 block south. By 6:30 a.m., the crowd had grown to over 300. News helicopters circled overhead. Local stations went live. National media picked up the feed. Minneapolis was burning again. 2 years after George Floyd. Same city. Different victim. Same outcome. ICE issued a statement at 7:15 a.m. The agency defended the operation as lawful enforcement of a valid deportation order. The shooting was described as a response to perceived threat. The agent involved was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Standard procedure. But the community heard none of it. They heard only the gunshots. They saw only the body bag being carried from the building at 8:02 a.m. They remembered only the promises made after Floyd that this would never happen again. Rachel Lindstrom was taken to Hennepin County Medical Center. She was uninjured physically but in shock. Doctors monitored the baby. Vital signs stable. Rachel gave a statement to investigators at 10:40 a.m. She described the raid, the standoff, the shooting. She was clear and consistent. Miguel had not reached for a weapon. He had no weapon. He was surrendering. The agent fired without justification. Her testimony would become central to what followed. By midday, protests had spread downtown. City Hall. Federal Building. Thousands marched through streets. Traffic stopped. Businesses closed. Governor Tim Walz activated the Minnesota National Guard at 1:30 p.m. Mayor Jacob Fry issued an emergency declaration, implementing a curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. But curfews meant nothing to people who had watched a man die for the crime of existing without papers. Type yes if you want to see how far this escalated. Federal authorities scrambled. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas released a statement condemning violence against federal officers and reaffirming the agency's mandate to enforce immigration law. The statement did not mention Miguel Ángel Santos by name. It did not address the shooting. It did not acknowledge the absence of a weapon. The omission was noted. It was not forgiven. That night, Minneapolis descended into chaos. Fires erupted in dumpsters, then vehicles, then buildings. The 3rd Precinct, symbol of police violence since Floyd's murder, was targeted again. Windows smashed. Graffiti sprayed. ICE kills, in red letters 10 feet tall. Riot police formed defensive perimeters. Tear gas filled the air. Rubber bullets were fired. 17 people were hospitalized. 34 were arrested. The city looked like a war zone. But something different was happening this time. The protesters were not just angry. They were organized. Mutual aid networks distributed food, water, medical supplies. Legal observers documented arrests. Medics treated injuries on the street. Communication networks coordinated movements in real time. This was not spontaneous rage. This was structured resistance. And it terrified federal authorities. Intelligence reports from FBI field offices flagged chatter among extremist groups. Far-right militias viewed the unrest as an opportunity to restore order through armed intervention. Anti-fascist networks mobilized to counter any militia presence. The potential for armed civilian conflict was escalating. Federal law enforcement faced a cascading crisis: manage immigration enforcement, control civil unrest, and prevent armed confrontation between ideological factions. The situation was deteriorating by the hour. On the second night, the occupation began. Over 2,000 people converged on the plaza outside the federal building. They erected tents. They built barricades from construction materials, trash bins, and vehicle barriers. They declared the space liberated territory. No ICE. No cops. No federal authority. Banners were raised. Minneapolis stands with Miguel. Abolish ICE. The occupation was peaceful but absolute. Federal employees could not enter or leave the building. City officials faced an impossible choice: order police to clear the occupation and risk mass casualties, or allow it to continue and concede control of federal property to protesters. Mayor Fry chose negotiation. City representatives met with protest organizers at 11 p.m. on the second night. The demands were non-negotiable. Halt all ICE operations in Minneapolis. Release all individuals arrested in the Cedar Avenue raid. Federal charges against the agent who killed Miguel. Full transparency in the investigation. The federal government rejected every demand. ICE operations would continue. Arrests were lawful. The shooting was under investigation, but charges were not guaranteed. The Justice Department announced it would prosecute anyone involved in the occupation under federal statutes prohibiting interference with government functions. Arrest warrants were being prepared. The standoff hardened. Share this video so people understand what federal overreach looks like. Behind closed doors, ICE began planning a second operation. Intelligence identified 12 individuals as key organizers of the resistance. The plan, codenamed Operation Restore Order, involved coordinated arrests across Minneapolis, timed for maximum impact. The goal was to decapitate the movement, remove the leadership, fragment the resistance, reassert federal authority. The operation was scheduled for 4 a.m. on the fifth day. But someone leaked. A source within Minneapolis police, identity still unknown, tipped off community networks. The organizers dispersed. Safe houses activated. When ICE teams arrived at the targeted addresses on day 5, they found empty apartments and neighbors who claimed ignorance. 0 arrests. The operation failed completely. Federal credibility shattered. The message was clear. The community had penetrated federal operations. They were always one step ahead. The political fallout was immediate and brutal. Congressional hearings were announced. Republicans demanded federal intervention to restore order and prosecute organizers. Democrats demanded ICE accountability and justice for Miguel. Minnesota's senators split along party lines. The state legislature introduced bills to criminalize local cooperation with ICE. The divisions in government mirrored the divisions on the streets. Miguel Ángel Santos was buried on the 7th day. Over 4,000 people attended the funeral at a church in South Minneapolis. His casket was draped in the Honduran flag. Rachel Lindstrom, still pregnant, spoke through tears. She described a man who worked construction, who sent money home to his mother, who dreamed of becoming a father. She described the moment he died. She described the silence of federal agents as they watched him bleed. Her words were broadcast live. They were heard by millions. The autopsy confirmed a single bullet to the chest. Entry wound consistent with close-range fire. No evidence of defensive wounds. Toxicology negative. The report documented cause of death, but made no judgment on justification. That determination would come from the Justice Department's investigation, expected to take 6 to 9 months. For Miguel's family, for Rachel, for the community, the wait was unbearable. They wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted the agent's name. They received none. The occupation of the federal building plaza continued for 11 days. On day 12, under cover of darkness, Minneapolis police executed a dispersal operation. Riot teams moved in at 4:30 a.m. The encampment was dismantled. 107 people were arrested. The occupation ended, but the resistance did not. If this opened your eyes to what's happening in America, comment resist below. The legal aftermath unfolded over months. The ICE agent involved in the shooting was never publicly identified. No charges were filed. The Justice Department's investigation concluded that the agent acted within policy, perceiving a threat in a high-stress situation. The family filed a wrongful death lawsuit in federal court. It remains pending. The 9 individuals arrested in the original Cedar Avenue raid were deported within weeks. Rachel Lindstrom gave birth to a daughter in April. She named her Esperanza. Hope. Minneapolis changed after Miguel. The city council passed the strongest sanctuary ordinances in the nation, with criminal penalties for any city employee who cooperates with ICE. Federal immigration enforcement in Minneapolis effectively ceased. ICE operations dropped 81% in the following year. The city became a fortress of resistance. But the cost was measured in lives. Miguel's life. The trauma inflicted on his community. The trust destroyed between residents and federal authority. This is what happens when enforcement becomes occupation. When law becomes violence. When federal power collides with local resistance, and the casualties are always the most vulnerable. Miguel Ángel Santos was not a criminal. He was a man trying to build a life with the woman he loved. He died because someone decided his presence in this country justified lethal force. That decision was made by an agent. It was authorized by a policy. It was defended by an institution. And it revealed the truth we cannot ignore. The line between immigration enforcement and state violence is not a line at all. It is a fiction we tell ourselves to avoid confronting what we have become. Comment your thoughts on whether this was justice or murder. Hit like if this story needs to be heard by more people. Subscribe because what happened in Minneapolis is not over. It is spreading. Federal raids continue. Communities resist. The conflict escalates. And the next death could be in your city. The next uprising could be in your neighborhood. The next victim could be someone you know. This is not the beginning. This is not the end. This is the reality of America in 2025. And we all have to decide which side of that reality we stand on.